Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope all of you are doing well, and today I'm about to talk about the Delta Warriors again. Yeah, it's been a while since I've shown off these guys. They were actually the subject of my first Make Your Own Card Game showcase here on the channel, and since I started showing off the cards from 2014, I thought it'd be fun to compare how the Delta Warriors were in the 2014 version of the Make Your Own game with the Delta Warriors of today. And I thought I'd get started with Delta Warrior Blitz here. You can see the 2014 version on the left and the current version on the right. And you can see in some cases the differences are pretty drastic. You can see the current version of Blitz has 2 attack, 0 defense, and the critical ability, meaning when he attacks into an opposing character, you destroy it. It's a pretty popular removal option in a lot of decks. But the old version of Blitz didn't have that. That being said, it's still a pretty good drop for a 1 cost with its 3 attack, 1 defense. It's a pretty good stat line still. And you can see the art's pretty similar too, although I do like the current version a lot more. And you can see some other differences with the card too, like with the placement of the attack and defense, but also notably near the card name. The biggest difference is that the old version of the Make Your Own Card game had no character subtypes, so there wasn't classifications like hero, dragon, or anything like that. It was all just based on like card names and such, so that's interesting. And that's the first one. Next up is Lumia. There's not a whole lot that's very different from the 2014 version and now. As you can see, the artwork's similar. You got the background's a little similar. It's just a little. The new one's a lot neater. Gale again has a lot more drastic changes. For example, like in addition to like the cost being different and the attack being different, he also had a different name. In the past version, he was called Delta Warrior Stratos. You can kind of tell what I was kind of referencing here. And he had a different ability. His old ability allowed you to pay 2 power to search your deck for a character card with Delta Warrior in its name and just add it to your hand. Whereas the new one lets you just grab a hero or a Delta Warrior from the top 4 cards of your deck. Up next, we have another character who hasn't really changed a whole lot from her previous appearance. It's Delta Warrior Flora Sky. Same stats and same abilities, and it has a similar background. There's just a little more going on there. Arrow is also slightly different as well. Slightly different in the stats, but both versions have the Hurricane ability, which allows you to pay 3 power. Even looking at it, the Hurricane ability is much different. The Hurricane on this version allows you to choose 3 cards at random from your opponent's hand and shuffle them into their deck, which is a very powerful ability. And she also has the ability Free Flight, allowing you to shuffle the arrow back into the deck for just 1 power. Definitely a very interesting comparison here. And then there's Freya. Both of these have abilities that prevent other characters from attacking for a turn. The old version only affects on the turn she comes into play, while as the new version, you can pay 2 power to activate it every turn over and over again. Raylem is also a card that's drastically different, mostly in terms of the abilities. They both have a quick shock ability, but it's vastly different between the two. The old version's quick shock allowed you to, when you played it from your hand, your opponent discards the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. The new one discards a card from your opponent's hand and also doing a bit of damage to them as well, based on the cost of the card being discarded. The old version of Raylem also had the ability to buff its own attack for a turn as well, with its charge ability. Up next is Delta Warrior Misfortune, which Both of these versions are the same card practically. But what's interesting about Miss Fortune is that she actually has a second version in the old version of the game. This version is a 6 cost, 7 attack, 4 defense character with the ability Hex. It's a passive ability, meaning it's always on, and whenever your opponent tries to attack this character, either with a character or an action card, you flip a coin. If tails, the attack or effect of that card does nothing. So she has a little bit of evasion on her in this version, which is kind of interesting. Pyro also has a new ability compared to his old version. The old version had Heat Crush, which basically when you attack with him, you get to flip a coin, and if it's heads, you discard one of your opponent's hand cards chosen at random. So it's a nice bit of disruption. Whereas the new version lets you knock itself out to knock out another character. Shadra is a character who hasn't really changed much from his previous version. He still has the same ability where your opponent loses 1 life for each card your opponent has in their hand. Although the old version simply ends your turn upon using the ability, the new one just simply skips your combat step. You can still do other things, so that's pretty significant. I suppose the cost is different as well. Shadra here costs 6, whilst the old version costs 5. Hydro is pretty much similar, although the old version costs less and has less stats, but it still lets you attack your opponent directly if you're willing to use its ability, so it's still pretty nice for that. Up next is, I think I have these in the wrong order, but here we have Akai, who was called Red Akai in the old version. I just kind of shortened it in the new version. And Akai was a drastically different card in the old version too, costing 10 power and having 10 attack, 10 defense. And his ability states that when you play this card from your hand, this character gains +1 attack for each character in your discard pile until the end of your opponent's next turn. So the idea is if you play him late game when you have a bunch of characters in your discard pile over the course of the game, he can become a really big character to finish your opponent off. Whereas the new version of Akai simply gives a buff to all your Delta Warriors whenever they come into play, and allowing you to draw additional cards. I think I like the new one better. Up next is Boldor, who's also pretty similar to his last appearance. The new version of Boldor simply costs 1 more and has slightly more defense than the other version, but you can still attack all your opponent's characters with it, just like you could in the new version. Up next is Delta Warrior Monty, otherwise known as Montana in the previous version. They both cost 8, but their abilities are much different. The old version of Montana actually has an ability that has been since retconned into a new keyword in Critical. So you can see that it was kind of the precursor to some of those keyword abilities right here. And then the final of the Delta Warriors that was included in the new version of the game is Maxim. Both cost 10, but they have much different stat lines. Current version of Maxim is an 8/8, and whereas the old version is a 12/12. They both have a similar ability where the character gains +2 attack for each character with Delta Warrior in its name you have in play. The new version was also extended to affect your other hero characters as well, though not as big of a boost. But it also trades lower stats for the ability Ward, which prevents it from being chosen except to attack. And then I've also got a few other Delta Warriors that haven't really been seen, including one for Nathan here. Nathan was originally going to be a Delta Warrior. I think these cards were made before I made these rebooted make your own cards. And there was just 2 decks I made, but as you can see here, this version of Nathan was made for a Delta Warrior based deck that I was working on. He has the ability where you can pay to look at the top 3 cards of your deck and grab a character with Delta Warrior in its name you find there to your hand. It's pretty nice. And these last few cards don't have art, but I wanted to show off them anyway. You've also got Candina, who can boost one of your Delta Warriors with 3 attack. You have Kane here, who has the Hurricane ability from the new version of Arrow, meaning it bounces a character your opponent controls to their hand. Although the new version lets you do that with pretty much any character, not just your opponent's. There's Delta Warrior Blaze, who comes in dealing 1 damage to an opponent. There's a Delta Warrior named Grant, who has the Taunt ability, meaning characters have to attack it. There's Delta Warrior Trinity, a 9-cost card that allows you to revive your older Delta Warriors and put them back onto the field. You can actually grab a number of Delta Warriors whose costs total 9 or less and put them into play as well. So it gives you a lot of value and is a great finisher. Delta Warrior Rain is a cheaper Delta Warrior that allows you to gain life between turns. Brighten is another reviving card for the Delta Warrior archetype that allows you to return 1 to your hand. And finally, there's another buffing Delta Warrior in Krista, giving all your Delta Warriors defense. And that about does it for this little showcase. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give me a like, and you can comment below which of these was your favorite, and if there was any cards you wanted to see in the new version of the game, you can let me know that as well. I'll see you in whatever video I upload next, and take care.